So welcome everyone. And my name is Heidi Bandulet. So I'm a senior programs officer at the CFI and have been involved with the MSI Fund for 10 years now since the beginning. I'm here with my colleague, Claudia Fall, who will also introduce herself later on. We're going to share the talking points on this presentation. So before I start, I wanted to really congratulate everyone for being among the 2023 cohort of facilities, because it was really a very tight competition. You're well aware of that. So you have every reason to be proud of your achievement of having this award. And it's our sincere hope that we can work together. And by this, I mean the CFI, but also among facilities. So in the next 7 years, counting this one, to help bring you to your next level of success. This is really what we're hoping for. But first things first, we need to make sure all the requirements are in order for you to access your funding next April. And I think that's top of mind. So our goal for this webinar is to focus on the immediate steps and what you need to do in the next 6 months, and give you a little glimpse of the activities to come over the award cycle. So next slide, please. So this session is being recorded. So the live questions at the end will be cut out of the recording. So you might want to keep your questions for the end, but you may also use the chat function so we can keep track and maybe hopefully answer those as they're coming along. So everyone has received the written instructions last week. So today we'll be walking you through these guidelines, but we're very much interested in answering any questions you may have, including your feedback on what you hear today, what's coming, any concerns you may have, because it will help improve our next, upcoming communication. So we might, use that as an opportunity to clarify certain points. And so I think, Claudia, it's for you to take over on the next slide.
Thank you, Heidi. So my name is Claudia Fall. I'm also a senior programs officer at the CFI and are part of the MSI team. So I'm going to show you here the 19 funded facilities across Canada. So you see a map here. But before that, I'm jumping too fast. I would, also like to welcome you to this information session, and thank you for attending, for being here. My heartfelt congratulations, of course, as well on your success. As Heidi said, it was a tight competition, so I'm very happy to be able to, to meet you here today and go over the requirements for the finalization of your awards. So starting in April 2023, CFI will support a total of 19 facilities through the MSI Fund, which includes 6 new facilities, which are here on this map in orange. 2 of those had been funded in the 2014-17 cycle. So some of you may already know them. They are the Advanced Laser Light Source ALS at the ENRS in Quebec, and the Center for Biodiversity Genomics at the University of Guelph in Ontario. So there are 13 facilities funded in the current cycle that have been renewed out of the 16 currently funded. And of course, since funding for these facilities has not yet been publicly announced, we would kindly ask you that you keep the list and this map confidential for now. CFI, some of you may know, CFI is currently in the midst of a reorganization of our staff and work portfolios. So that's why even though currently funded facilities are used to working with the specific senior program officers, we want you to be aware that we are moving to a new structure. So the oversight of facilities will be centralized in the MSI team, and we will be asking you to either contact the MSI ESM at innovation.ca email box with your questions, or at least CC us. So I can assure you that we will managing the transition very carefully to minimize disruptions in service and to ensure some continuity between the working relationships and the history of your files that reside with your senior program officers. So there will be an overlap of several months. So please feel free, for those of you that are currently funded, to continue communicating with your senior program officer, but start CCing the mailbox. And for all the new facilities, please direct all your questions to the email address on the slide here. So I'm going to now show you the schedule for finalization. By following this timeline, we should be able to ensure that first installments of your contributions are going to be paid in early April. That's why we are planning to share with your facility our risk assessment of your facility, as well as a budget review questionnaire and some additional information on how to select key indicators in September. So this is ahead of the virtual meetings you see here on the timeline for late September. Those will be scheduled at the end of September individually, which each one of you, somebody from the MSI team, somebody from our evaluation group, as well as somebody from our finance team will attend this meeting to go over the documents we provide to you and to really answer all your questions, have discussions about the risk assessment, about the selection of key indicators, so that you have all the information you need to then be able to submit your finalization documents to us in the coming months. And there are two deadlines essentially that you will have to meet. So by November 30th this year, we would ask you to submit the completed budget review questionnaire, as well as your final selection of key indicators. And that will allow us to provide, to maybe ask some additional questions, have a little bit of a back and forth to then be able to finalize all the documentation required for finalization by February 15th. So that will include, really the final key indicators, an updated budget, the memorandum of understanding between the MSI as well as the administrative institution, an interinstitutional agreement for distributed facilities, and of course the award transition form that you need to submit in CAPS. So in March, we'll then draft all the award agreements that will keep the finance and also the programs team busy. And we should be able then to make our payments in early April. For those of you that have received conditional funding, please check the multidisciplinary assessment committee report, which should include the detail of that condition, as well as the timeline for meeting the conditions. Conditions are not necessarily a prerequisite to finalization, but it depends on the timelines that are in your report. And then we want to make sure all of you please make sure to really carefully look at your expert committee reports. We ask them to provide you with feedback with any recommendations on how you could improve processes, from their point of view. I mean, we had an excellent opportunity there, having experts from all over the world assembled to look at your facilities. So please take their advice and try to adapt it or implement it in your facilities, because once the expert committees will reconvene either for the next competition or for a periodic assessment during our funding period. They may want to look at what have you done with their recommendations. So it would be a good practice to go over those in more detail. Now, for the budget review itself, as I've mentioned, we'll be sharing the budget review questionnaire with you in September. And the information that you will provide through this questionnaire will essentially help us review the budget in more depth. So the budget justification included in your applications is not always very detailed. It really depends on the proposal. Therefore, we will ask you to provide, this additional detail, especially on some specific cost items and on partner contribution, and that will really help us assess the eligibility of costs and also of partner contributions, and confirm, of course, our final CFI contribution. Depending on the level of detail provided in your proposal, so as I just explained, we will ask for more detail on, for instance, on personal costs, or what you've planned with your contingencies. So this will be tailored really to your facility. It's not a form that you all get the same. We will sit down, go through the expert committee review reports as well as your proposal, and tailor our questions to the specificity of your facility. Yeah, and then as I've mentioned, we need to confirm partner funding. So that's an annual process. Every year we will need to confirm that partner funding for the upcoming fiscal year is in place to be able to disperse funds. So once eligibility and partner funding questions have been clarified, you will be able to submit an updated budget. In fact, that will also be something that you will do on an annual basis. Every year you submit an update to your budget through CAMS. And for facilities that have received partial funding, of course, you will need to adapt and make changes to that budget. And please, along with the budget, submit then a rationale for the changes that you will need to apply. So the process, the budget review process, essentially ensures that the updated budget submitted at finalization is consistent with CFI policies and our funding decisions. I think the next one is now already for Heidi, so let me change it and I'll hand it over to Heidi.
Sorry, the mute thing happened to me. But when we launched the program a decade ago, we consulted internationally to develop an oversight framework to outline our requirements and the expectations regarding the governance, management, implementation of best practices within facilities, in order for us to ensure we are good stewards of public funding, as the public would expect. And of course, as part of our oversight, we are accountable to the Government of Canada to demonstrate that we are meeting the objectives of the fund and those of CFI more broadly. But more generally, our oversight plays a significant role in making the case for continued funding in the future for this program. And our approach with the MSIs has always been one of continuous improvement. So our oversight framework is evolving as well and is meant as an evergreen document. So if you would look at the framework that's available right now on our online, on our website, it has been updated in 2019. So we're currently working on refreshing that framework for it to be available maybe early next winter. But the guiding principles really remain. So we try to balance principles of scientific excellence, responsible stewardship, accountability, but factoring in the particular situation of each facility. So facilities are multifaceted undertakings, so we need to capture and appreciate the breadth of your activities. So that's what we try to do with our reporting. We recognize your facilities have a broad societal value and their impacts are not limited to fostering, scientific knowledge for the benefits of scientists, but they also impact their environment socially and economically. So alongside this breadth, we try to embed lots of flexibility and recognition of the fact that your facilities are all different, whether in their mandate or mission, stakeholders, or in the culture of the research communities using them. So our approach will be to tailor our oversight activities to the specificities of your facilities. So far, for those that were funded in the past cycle or in the current cycle, yes, we have done some of that customization, but this cycle, there's a necessity to go a step further, considering that the MSI family is growing. So this means that we will be looking at a risk-based approach to determine the level of oversight on your facility. So you might be familiar with this. The CFI uses a tool for risk assessment and management called the TRAM, if you've heard of it. We use it for the Innovation Fund typically. So based on risks, certainly the dollar amount, the percentage of CFI will be, determining factors, but not only. So prior experience with the CFI, the management capability of the institution, the maturity of the governance and management structures, and other factors will come into play. So it will not be a mathematical calculation and a prescription imposed on you, but a judgment on the set of circumstances for your award. And there will be an opportunity to have a conversation about that and factor in your input. So we'll work together to determine what's best for your facility and not necessarily add burden that makes your life very difficult. So the objectives of the fund mean we are here to help you be successful in supporting excellent science and providing quality services to your user communities. So the oversight approach is also here for us to learn to work together at mitigating some of your problems. So oversight activities will certainly include, regular contacts, regular calls, emails, as needed. Typically an annual financial and progress report, which I will get into in the next slide. This also includes defining key indicators to frame your performance and impact of your facility. So we have an obligation also to carry out financial audits for CFI contributions over 10 million. And other facilities might be selected by our finance team. They have an approach that also sometimes selects smaller projects. We're also required to carry out by our obligation with the government periodic reviews of your facilities on the science and governance and management. So this may include a site visit or a CFI courtesy visit as well. That's possible. And where possible, we try to work with other funding partners to streamline some of the requirements to avoid duplication and ensure that we have all that is needed to maintain transparency and good communication among all of us. That's really the point. So there's an opportunity as well to reuse some of the activities of your own oversight bodies to avoid duplicating all these committees. So for example, I've been following Snow Lab for over a decade, and they have, since the beginning, granted me access to their board documents, and I get to see the reports of their 2 external science advisory bodies. So that really complements and addresses most of our questions without adding further activities. And then another popular activity that has been appreciated by facilities in the program so far is the hosting of workshops. So hopefully we'll be able to host an in-person workshop next year, but in any case, it's an opportunity to network amongst you and also share best practice on a particular set of topics of interest common to most facilities. And it's an opportunity for more experienced facilities to help those which are new to the program. And then on top of this, we will hold webinars to share news, for example, once the refresh of the new oversight framework, perhaps. So next slide, please. So having said that, you can anticipate providing us with annual financial and progress reports. These are typically due mid-June and cover the previous fiscal year. And then the first report for you will be due in 2024. And then there's a final report that will cover the whole funding period that will be due in your case in 2029. That's a long while from now. And of course, the template of the progress reports will be tweaked depending on its purpose and the period it covers. So as a side note, for facilities which are currently funded in the 2017 cycle, your 2023 report will be a bit different than your annual report so far, as it will cover the full 6 years. So it's a wrap up so that we can see how the program has succeeded in meeting its objectives during the 6 years. So more information on that will be provided to you by year's end. So both the financial and progress reports are reviewed by the MSI team, that's a given. And we typically also forward the report to main funding partners and share our observations with them. So it's an opportunity for them to use our reports. And then we're also, like I said earlier, part of our agreement with the government, required to carry out periodic external reviews of the facility's performance. So this could be a midterm review, but the frequency and extent will depend on the risk category of your facility. So this is something we are currently looking at, and with guiding principles of not adding excessive burden on your end, reusing what's already available, and making sure that it's useful, meets our obligations with the government, but that it's useful for you and you can benefit also from feedback. I mean, your funding is secured for the 6 years, so it's it's really meant also to be useful to you. So next slide. So otherwise, in terms of content, so both the financial and performance reports will be covering both the past years and plans for the upcoming years. So we really like to assess both in tandem. So for the financial report, we will be asking that you provide a rationale for your expenditures that match your activities for the year, and also a discussion on your financial projections in light of your planned activities. So any change relative to what you told us the previous year needs to be justified, just an explanation, just so we're really interested in knowing the full story of your facility and making sure we understand your reality. Because in terms of content, the performance report will cover activities very broadly, looking at your achievements, and these reports really serve multiple purposes. So it contains cumulative data and information related to the objectives of the MSI fund itself. so that we get a sense of the overall impact also of the funding on your operations, on maintaining research capabilities, on human resources, on providing better access and services to users. And then you're also required to report on the evolution of your governance, your management and strategy, as well as your scientific achievements and benefits to Canada. So it's a broad view of what was in the proposal, as you know, and interested in hearing how you're progressing through that. But it also serves as an opportunity to discuss your challenges and for you to provide feedback on the MSI fund as well and how it's going for you. So it's really framing a discussion. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned a couple times already, I think that progress reporting will involve some metrics. So one of the fund's objective is to promote good practices as governance and management. And one of those practices in place within many organizations is the definition and use of quantitative metrics that help you become more effectively managed and sustainable. And we see in large facilities around the world, they're increasingly incorporating metrics to facilitate their internal decision-making and be able also to demonstrate both impact and performance to their stakeholders. So starting next April, we will ask that you collect data on a handful of indicators. You have seen some of that already at the proposal stage when we ask you, for example, to provide the distribution of your users. So some of these indicators might also be among a pre-existing set that you might be using internally. And for renewed facilities, this will be very similar to the current cycle. We're not ditching everything we've done in the past and reinventing it. So we're just trying to improve on what was there. So in doing this, we want to be clear on the fact that our primary intent with the promotion of those quantitative measures is that these are helpful to you in framing your progress towards achieving your strategic goals and capture some of the impact of your activities. So strictly speaking, impact assessment and performance monitoring are not quite the same and can mean different things to different people, but significantly overlap. So performance tends to monitor your efficient use of your resources and processes and tend to be closer to things that are within your range of control, whereas impact includes the intended and unintended effects of the facility's activities and outputs. Therefore, not always things on which you have direct control over. So we are very mindful of that, but we are using a hybrid approach where the set of indicators might be more or less within your control, depending on the type of your facilities. But for all practical purposes, we believe that the approach will help us monitor progress of individual facilities, but also highlight the achievements of the cohort of facilities. And that can help us determine whether or not we are meeting our objectives with that fund. So in that sense, indicators contribute to successful communication of results and achievements and demonstrate the impact of CFI investments to all our stakeholders, because we have the obligations quite similar to yours. But in no way, and I want to stress this, the intent is to compare facilities, but be able to demonstrate some of their collective impact. And for that purpose, they need to be comparable. So we're much aware that those metrics can only provide a partial view of the performance. And we run the risk of oversimplifying things if we were only looking at that. But taken all together with the narrative of the progress report, that's when we get the full picture of your facility. So we're encouraging you the use of examples, of testimonials from your users, your stakeholders. This is also very useful because at the end of the day, we want to understand how you operate and what kind of context you are operating in. And I think our approach is captured by a famous quote that you've maybe heard before that's attributed to a sociologist. The idea that we recognize that not everything can be counted that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. And I think we recognize that at the CFI. So very much interested in understanding what your facility is about. So next slide. So in the next slide on the key indicators. So in choosing key indicators, the most important thing is that these align with your mission and strategic goals. I mean, they are a way to measure whether your intended outcomes have been achieved. So indicators for that purpose must be clearly defined, measurable, although, there is a possibility of qualitative measures, but here we focus on the quantitative ones. And there will be inevitable challenges because it must be measuring something for which you can get collectible and accurate data as best as possible. And here's when the broader context helps and the narrative helps, because your ability to measure is limited in some cases, and you only get an under and overestimate of a real number. So, well, we take these information with a grain of salt. So in all of this, the most important consideration is that the indicators have meaning to you and your stakeholders. Even better if these are actionable. But I said earlier, some indicators are for things that might not be really directly within your control. So they're like proxies for more remote impact. So you might have some control over the pathways to these impacts, but not always. And then there's also a question of whether these indicators can be used for international benchmarking and to help demonstrate how you compare to similar facilities internationally. And as research facilities, many of you have in common high-level objectives. So we will be asking you, in recognition of that, also to collect a set of standard indicators to account for these commonalities. And to help us report on the collective achievements, like I've said, but also facility-specific indicators to reflect the diversity of our research facilities in the program. So next slide, please. So in the current cycle, facilities are reporting on 6 standard indicators. So we're now revising them slightly, mostly the definitions in light of the experiences we've had using them and the feedback from facilities. But do not expect significant changes, because we also want to ensure some continuity between the cycles. So the full detail of those standard indicators will be provided to you in September ahead of our meeting. But what you can expect are similar to what was asked of you in the proposal. So scientific output, tech transfer activities, whether you have them or not, it's okay not to have any, for example, but we just track on all facilities. And then the user base is very important, the type of users, whether they use the facility remotely, on site, or the data provided by the facility, and have an idea of the geographic distribution of those users. And then we're looking at some kind of measure of the level of use of the facility relative to its capacity. That was in a proposal. I know this one is a challenge because if you have distributed resources and perhaps different types of resources which have a different concepts of capacity, it's very difficult to reduce this to a number and keep it meaningful. So we'll be working on that. User satisfaction is one that currently we have and propose to keep because it provides another opportunity for your facility to engage with its user base. And it's something that most facilities have direct control over, how satisfied their users are. And another indicator we would like to add this year, and it's something you already provide in the budget, but we rarely have a discussion around it, is the number of people employed by the facility and the types of positions they hold. So we may be looking at asking to provide these numbers for those on the MSI payroll versus those whose salaries are covered through other sources, just to gain a full understanding of your needs. Or we might only ask that in in the narrative portion, because this is very useful information for the CFI and expert committees in its decision making, but also the government. I mean, jobs, it's currently one of the 3 key metrics that are emphasized on our webpage for this fund. So next slide. So in terms of facility-specific indicators, we will be working one-on-one with you to, select a few that are relevant to your specific facility, and that could help us track your progress. So it will be a conversation. You may always, you may have, like I said earlier, a previous set of indicators. Not all of these need to be provided to the CFI, but we will try to select a few that complement those that are the standard ones, complement them, and then are close to your particular goals and missions that are not already captured. You can have categories that can be broken down, so you have some flexibility in how the indicators appear. So we will be having those discussions. So here I'm providing a few examples of what we are currently seeing. So some track collaboration agreements or industry contracts, and then there's data-focused facilities that have several metrics on data sharing that are very important to them and very relevant. Some have outreach activities as really high up there in their priority. Some track environmental impact or impact on public policy. So all of this customization will depend on the nature of your facility. So next slide. So we ask that we try together to establish those indicators before the year end, the end of this calendar year. So for those who have renewed funding, it's an opportunity to reflect on whether your facility-specific indicators still align with your management and strategic plans, whether they're useful, if you need to remove one, tweak an existing indicator, replace it with something better, or add a new indicator to reflect new activity you might have added recently. That's all possible, but it's an opportunity to look at them, because then we will try to, lock them in for 6 years so that we have this continuity. So Claudia, I think it's for you to take us in the next steps.
Yes, thank you, Heidi. So just now a few concrete steps that you will have to take over the next few months. As I've mentioned, we will be sharing a number of documents with you in September and go over these in our virtual meetings that we will set up with each facility at the end of September. So we'll together review the conditions of the award, clarify any outstanding issues, answer questions, discuss the budget review questionnaire, discuss our risk analysis. As Heidi mentioned, we want it to be a discussion with you, and discuss possible key indicators. That's the time where we will invite a senior performance analyst from our evaluations team. They will be able to actually answer some of your questions regarding those indicators and how to select them. So that will be a really good opportunity for you to get to ask questions or on issues that you need to understand in order to set your indicators. So I've already mentioned the documents that you will be providing. November 30th, the review questionnaire needs to be filled out and provided to the CFI. And at that time, we would also ask that you confirm partner funding for the upcoming fiscal year, your selected key indicators. And then by February 15th, we want to really have the final set of documents submitted, which will then at that time include an updated budget, the award finalization form submitted through CAMS, the memorandum of understanding between your facility and the administrative institution, just to clarify roles and responsibilities between the university and the MSI. And for distributed facilities, we will also require an interinstitutional agreement. So you all are aware of the navigator. If your facility is not yet listed there, we encourage you to check it out and list it. It could help you attract new users. So we recommend that you check it out. And then, as I've mentioned before, national announcements for this funding has not yet happened. So we are coordinating with the minister's office on that. So unfortunately, we do not have any information on when those announcements will happen. And we ask that the awards remain under embargo until they are publicly announced by the minister. So for any questions, and if you wish to coordinate your communications with the CFI, please contact Cynthia Baudin. Her email address is here. So we really recommend it because our communications team is already preparing some communications. So maybe, by getting in touch with them, it might help you to just align your own communications with those that the CFI is already preparing. And so I think that's the time now where we can stop our recording and start with questions. Please feel free just to switch on your microphone and ask